All right. Welcome everyone to Forum. John Snyder left me in charge. Um, I questioned it at the time, and then I decided it was a good thing because we could have a little fun. One of the things that, One of the things that I really love about Loyola and working with people is there are a lot of hidden talents. And I think you get to see one side of people, especially the faculty, in the classes, but you don't always get to interact with them a lot outside of class. And one of the things a lot of you might not have known about is Dr. Goolsby, far from spending all of his time marketing, makes really incredible guitars. And instrument building is something that's always fascinated me. You know, I teach music technology. A lot of people think music technology kind of began with computers and microphones. But guys were spending a lot of time going all the way back, to the ancient Greeks, figuring out how to make interesting sounds with technology. And so tonight we have Jerry Goolsby to talk about the guitars he makes.
Haven't done anything yet.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things to me, and I think everyone knows the story of your rock and roll career and your band, so we won't go into the name or any of that.
That's a good thing.
But you were a keyboard player, right?
That's the truth. I was a keyboard player.
So how does a keyboard player get into making guitars?
Well, when I played keyboard, it's kind of a long story. I started off playing bass because I wasn't talented. You started it. And I played in this band, and all of a sudden all the songs that were coming out had keyboards in them. These kind of Farfisa sounded terrible. Anyway, box organs, remember that?
Yeah.
Horrible sounding. Anyway, the rhythm guitar player in the band decided he was going to buy a keyboard to start playing keyboards along with the band. And unfortunately, he didn't know how to play it, and it became apparent within a couple of months that he was never going to learn how to play it. And so I knew how to play piano some, and so we swapped. I went from bass to playing keyboards, and he started playing bass. Right? And so he sort of got a demotion. And so anyway, I'll use all of them I can on you while it's on tape. Anyway, so now I was playing keyboard, and some songs just didn't sound right with a keyboard. They needed a guitar, and so I kind of started playing boom ching ching guitar along with the keyboards, and so anyway, I developed a fascination with guitars. My dad was a very talented carpenter, and so we built houses and things. So I was very sort of pragmatically oriented as a child and learned how to use wood and all. We had a lead guitar player who went and bought a Stratocaster, and this Stratocaster would not stay in tune. He could not make it through an entire song without the thing going out of tune. And so I became fascinated about that and worked on it a long time to try to finally make it to where it would play in tune. And then one thing led to another, and people found out that I could make a Stratocaster stay in tune, so I had a line of people around my house always giving me their Stratocasters to fix to make them play in tune. And then I went to work for a music store, and then I started working on guitars and just fixing them and all this, and working on other people's stuff. And just the next thing you know, I know a lot about guitars. And so I have several mental illnesses, and one of them is that when I can't understand something, when something doesn't make sense to me, when I don't understand what causes something, it really bothers me. And so I became fascinated with Martin guitars. We would order, the store would get in 6 Martin guitars, all D28s. You pull them all 6 out of the case, and they all sound completely different. They're all 6 made out of the same wood in the same plant with the same construction techniques by the same people. But each one of those 6 guitars would sound completely different. As a matter of fact, there was a time when we could extract a premium by allowing a customer to come in and choose first. If you chose first, it was an extra $100. If you chose second, it was an extra $50. And so we would, and because there was that much variance in them. And so I started working on acoustic guitars. I just got to the point where I just wondered what made them tick. And then I had one of those fateful things happen to me. I was in Allentown, Pennsylvania, doing a consulting project, and anyway, Martin was right up the road, and so I drove to the Martin plant in Nazareth. And anyway, long story short, I walked out with a box full of wood. One of the guys that I knew there, I told him I said, I've always known I could build a guitar, but just never did it. And he said, well, here, try it. So he gave me a box full of wood. And the next thing you know, I got taken over our 3-car garage at the house. And then I built the first couple of them. And then the third one I built for a friend of mine. And, word started getting out. He plays all over the place. He's a singer-songwriter guy. Word starts getting out, and the next thing you know, I'm building them all the time. And let's just say the family wasn't happy about it. And so because I'd taken over we had a 3-car garage, I'd taken over all that and got to where I was doing a lot of that on the weekends. And every time I had a spare moment, I'd get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go out and do inlay and build guitars. And so I've been messing with it for the last, 15 years or so, just trying to understand what makes a guitar tick. And so I've been, my vision is I want to retire. That's the first part of the pipe dream. The second part of the pipe dream is that when I'm 65, I'd like to spend the rest of my life just building masterpieces. And so I've been stashing wood and getting ready, for that, because I got enough wood to maybe build somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 really, really good guitars. And so everything in the meantime is just practice. I'm just practicing, trying to understand what makes things tick, experimenting. Sometimes experiments don't work. And I back off of those and try something else. And so that's kind of how it all got started. A long story, huh?
No, it's a good story. I was kind of amazed the first time I went over because I didn't realize Jerry had this talent. And here's the pieces of guitars strewn across the dining room table. And I thought, well, I get frustrated with my playing, but I haven't actually taken anything apart. He must be really serious about this.
Yeah, I am. I really am serious about it. I'm trying to figure these things out. There's a lot of people tried to figure it out, and so I'm just the latest victim of it.
So, did you have anyone helping you along when you started on this? Or I know you had repaired a bunch of instruments. So
No, unfortunately, I didn't. Sometimes it's a blessing, and sometimes it was a curse. But no, I just stacked that wood up over in the corner of the living room and looked at it for about 3 or 4 months. And then finally got up the nerve, went out and started buying tools and buying equipment to cut the wood and everything it took. And then one by one, I would just started figuring it out. And there are magazines out there and books out there that you can read or whatever, but they don't help you a lot. You have to kind of figure it out for yourself.
So this was the old cut away everything that's not a guitar?
Well, not exactly, but somewhere in that neighborhood. I messed up a lot. I ruined a lot of stuff, and had to just work my way through it.
So how do you get started building a guitar?
How do you start?
How do you start?
Well, I brought some paraphernalia with me tonight. These are bits and chunks and pieces of things just laying around the shop, just to show you how I kind of go about doing things. I guess the wood is the number one thing that you have to worry about. The wood is one of the hardest parts of building a guitar. You have to find the right wood, and the right wood is very, very, very hard to find. This is a piece of cocobolo. It comes from the rainforest in Central America. Those people that are always marching around campus about the rainforest, this would be what it was about.
And Jerry actually mugged one of them. That's where he got the wood.
Here we have a volunteer. Need a volunteer from the crowd. Come up. Come here. Describe this.
It's heavy.
Very, very heavy.
Moderately smooth.
The heavy part was the part I was looking for. This is, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll pass this around the room. This piece of wood probably has the density of some steel. It takes about an hour and a half to cut this piece of wood with a bandsaw that I have that dims the lights in the neighborhood when you turn it on. And you have to feed this thing through a bandsaw very, 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 very slowly. As a matter of fact, it starts smoking as you push it through there. This just got to kind of give you a sense of, you can pass that around, let everybody kind of feel of it. The idea is that you want to cut it down until you have it into slices that are like this thick. And so this is a piece of Brazilian Dalbergia Negra, which has cost about as much money as gold per ounce. This is worth about as much as gold per ounce. This piece of wood is legal because it was cut down prior to 1982 when it was made illegal to have it in the United States. If you have this piece of wood and you go through customs, in most European countries, they will confiscate it from you in the same way they confiscate ivory. This is a 9-inch wide piece of Dalbergia Negra, and that's in order for this to have come off of a tree, the tree would have had to have been. You have the core wood and the heart wood, the core of the tree, and then you have the bark that's on the tree. This white stuff is where the bark's. There's a piece of wood that's about that far out, and then you have the bark that's on the tree. And so I counted the rings on this particular piece of wood here. This tree was 135 years old when it caught on fire in Brazil. The reason that I have it is because the tree caught on fire. It burned the outside of the tree, and it melted the pulp in the middle of the tree, killed the tree. But the heartwood of the guitar survived. This stuff here is just fine. And so this tree would have had to have been that big around to get this piece of wood out of there. And so this piece of wood is very, 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 very valuable to me. If somebody steals that other piece of wood, I won't care. This piece of wood, I would care. So you slice it into two pieces. And I brought the wrong two pieces, of course. But basically what you want to do is book match them, and I brought the wrong two ones. These are not exactly book matched. But you want to book match them and put them together, and then when you book match them, basically that's how you make the back. You glue this together and it makes the back. And so the two of them together make the back. Here's another.
Now, is there a difference in the woods you would use for the back and, say, the sides and top?
Yeah, the wood on the back of the guitar determines how the guitar is going to sound in terms of what reflects. The top of the guitar produces the tone that you're going to hear, and it produces 100% of the tone. Virtually 100% of the tone is coming from the top vibrating. We'll talk about that in a second. The sound comes off of the top of the guitar and hits the bottom of the guitar. And whatever wood is on the bottom absorbs some frequencies and then reflects other frequencies. Rosewood is normally the one that most people prefer because it absorbs a little bit of treble but reflects all the bass. So a rosewood guitar is almost always a very deep, mellow, rich sounding guitar. Mahogany tends to absorb bass and reflect treble. Maple tends to absorb treble and bass and produce a real mid-rangey kind of sound. Jazz players love maple back guitars because maple back guitars tend to have sort of a mid-rangey sort of sound to them. So yeah, it makes a big difference. It makes a huge difference in how the guitars sound. And so, like, you can buy. I didn't bring it. You can buy rosewood that's grown in India around plantations. They have these tea plantations. And around the edge of these tea plantations, they plant rosewood trees to provide shade that goes over the tea plants to keep them from burning up with the heat. The problem with that wood is that it gets a lot of nutrients, it gets a lot of water, it's kind of taken care of. This stuff that grows out in the forest, out in the jungle, has to be so hard that an insect can't eat it. You see, that's why it survives. If it were soft in any way, form, or fashion, the insects would eat it and it would die. And so so this wood is very, 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 very hard. So native growth rosewood is the preferred wood that you want to have. This is a better example of book matching. You can see how these two pieces of wood came right off the tree right next to each other. You see how the grain matches. And so when I cut these two pieces of wood were like this, and then I ran a saw down through the middle of them, so that they yielded that. And so this will become the sides of the guitar. That's what this is made for. All right? So this will become the sides, and that over there will become the back. The sides of the guitar don't make any difference, as far as I know, very little difference in how the guitar sounds. You just want this to be the same, to look the same as the wood that goes on the back of the guitar. You want those to match, so that it's just aesthetically pleasing. This affects the sound. This doesn't. You just want this to be aesthetically pleasing. So this is, I could sell these 4 pieces of wood for probably, I don't know, $4,000.
And now you know why the really fancy guitars are expensive.
Yeah. A lot of people find it interesting how you take, this is Indian rosewood here, how you take those two sides and bend them so that they look like a guitar side. Now these are 2 book matched pieces of rosewood here. Now to show you, I thought I'd just demonstrate to you a little bit about how this sort of works. This is a piece of scrap rosewood, and this is an iron. This is 350 degrees. And so what you do, if I could get where I can put some pressure on it, it's normally nailed down on a...
You want me to
No,
hold
it's
it
okay. I'll
for
just
you?
sit here for a second. We'll just be patient. So what you do is you put the piece of wood on there, and you try everything you can to be patient. Patience is not my virtue. And you just get it hot. And over time, to bend a pair of sides takes, probably about 15 minutes, something like that, to bend it.
Now, do you overbend them sometimes?
You have to overbend them because the nature wants it to come out, go right back to where it was. And so it will try as best it can to go right back where it was. So you see how it's already bent? Okay. And so what you do is you bend the sides, where they look like this. Now I have a form at home that has this bend in it. So I bend the wood and then put it in the form so it stays there. Now I've already bent 75 or 80 sets of sides. I have 80 sets of sides already set back. And the reason is, to bend it, you kind of have to get it wet, and moisture is the enemy of a good guitar. You don't want to ever build one. You want to build it when the wood's got any moisture in it whatsoever. And so I already have these things drying so that 15, 20 years from now they'll be ready to go.
So how do you manage building good guitars in New Orleans?
It's not ideal, but you just do the best you can. It's just all I can do, unless I want to go move to the desert. But the good news about building a guitar in New Orleans, if you build a guitar when it's humid, and then you send it somewhere where it's dry, when you send it to somewhere where it's humid, that's okay. If you send it to somewhere it's dry, you kind of have to allow for that when you're building it. What you do next is you take what's called this is the neck plate, and what this is I copied Martin on this one. You make these things, and you glue this to the front of the guitar, and this is where the neck is going to set in the guitar. The sides go around here, and then the bottom, then the bottom of the guitar goes to this. So you glue the sides up, and then I wind up making things like this. This is just a jig that I made to hold one in place while I'm working on it. Let's see if I can get this all loose. Let me take this out of here. It has to be under a lot of pressure to hold it. So this is they call this the rib of the body. So you glue the neck plate in here, and this is the rear plate, the heel plate. And the heel plate
I try to choose wood that's got a little bit of tone to it when I build them. This is, and I get most of that off the street. This was somebody's countertop that they threw out on Pine Street. And so I was kind of tapping on it. Had a nice sound to it. You know, so I chopped this up, you know, to make the heel plate.
So if you see someone going through your garbage, tapping the wood, it's...
Oh, my neighbors think I'm so weird. Here in New Orleans, people take 100-year-old pieces of cypress that was a baseboard or a crown molding, and they throw it in the trash. That's a 100-year-old piece of cypress. I mean, it's done what it's going to do. And for bracing wood, oh man, hard to beat. And so I just walk down the street. You know, I go through people's, I see something in a trash can, I'll tap on it because there's a difference between what I call thunk thunk wood and ding ding wood. Ding ding wood has a sound to it. Thunk thunk wood just goes, you know, there's nothing to it. But ding ding wood kind of has a little tone to it, and you want to put as much wood in here that's got tone in it as you can.
Now, you've got some curving around the edges there, too.
Yeah. This stuff, you just buy this stuff. This is what it looks like. And it's flexible. It bends, and you just put it around the side of the guitar and glue it. You glue this on with clothespins. You take clothespins, put a little glue on there, and glue it on there. And that provides the surface that you're going to glue the top to and the back to. Okay, so that gives you that's the surface that holds the guitar together. Actually, it's this little bit piece of what they call purfling. Yeah, but anyway, so things like this you have to build. You know, you can't buy something like this. And so I use this jig, you know, to hold the body in place, you know, while it's drying. And I use the jig to glue the top and the back of it together. So this allows me to glue it easily.
How much has your body shape evolved, or is it pretty much the straight Martin?
A Martin D-size guitar is what most of my customers want, that's sort of what I wind up building. A D-size guitar, you know, has a really boomy sound to it. I kind of like a triple-aught size myself. A triple-aught size to me is the most balanced sounding guitar, but it depends on what my customer wants. If they want a D size or don't want a boomy sounding guitar, then I'll go to a D usually.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about the difference in sizes for the people who aren't guitar players.
Well, the most popular guitar you see is called a Dreadnought size guitar. It was invented by the Martin Guitar Company back in the early 1930s. And basically, it's a kind of this is a D-size guitar. A triple-aught guitar, this is 15 inches across here. That's the main thing. On a triple-aught size guitar, it's about an inch shorter across there, and a triple-aught size has a deeper waist to it. C.F. Martin III and C.F. Martin II too did not like Dreadnought size guitars. They thought they were too boomy, and they thought they looked like someone that was overweight. To them, they thought, this is terrible to say, but I guess I can get fired for it. They thought a triple-aught guitar would look like a very shapely woman, had a nice waist, you know, to it, and they named the parts after women too. You know, the shoulder, the neck, the waist. On thin ice, aren't I?
Yeah.
Anyway, there's probably something to be said for that. We could turn this into some kind of psychoanalysis class.
That's true.
But anyway, so the size of the guitar will dictate a lot about how it's going to sound. And the shape of the guitar will dictate how it's going to sound, because it's how much surface is vibrating versus how it's moving, how it's going to vibrate, and how much room the sound has to bounce around inside of there. So it makes a lot of difference in how it's going to sound.
I hadn't realized the difference in sound holes either. And I was reading an article on Tony Rice, who's a great bluegrass player, has a Martin that over the years they had enlarged the sound hole.
Yeah, they enlarge the sound hole because it lets more air out of it.
Yeah.
It gives the air pressure in there a place to go.
And so if you have a small sound hole, you're basically leaving pressure inside the guitar, which sort of restrains the sound of it, restrains the ability of it to get out.
Yeah, they were saying that the wider sound hole, more treble.
I don't know about that. It just has more volume to escape, more room to escape. That's all.
Well, so you've got the ribs. You talked a little bit about the back.
Yeah, I didn't talk
Next
about
part's
the top.
the top.
The tops are made out of spruce. And spruce is a very, 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 very light wood. This weighs nothing. This is unbelievable. This is like probably float. This is very, very, very light wood. It's book matched also. This is made out of two pieces. This piece of spruce here was cut down in 1954 on the northeast side of a hill at an elevation over 4,000 feet. Now the reason that that's cool is because the grain on every single year is virtually identical. The higher the elevation, and if you go on the northeast side of the hill, the weather never changes. And so it gets the same amount of sunlight, same amount of rain, same amount of everything. And so you don't get these big mineral marks. You can see in this one some mineral marks, but they'll disappear as soon as I put the finish on it. But it also has what's called a cross chatter. This piece of wood grew very, very, very slowly, and it has these marks across it, which means the tree was kind of moving a little bit. Must have been in a windy part of things. These are sort of like stretch marks that people get when they get overweight. When the tree starts moving, it'll start stretching the grain apart, and it makes these little ripples. That's where curly maple comes from all you guys that are violin players or whatever. Now, what I was going to show is that what this sounds like. This is a tuning fork, and you put a tuning fork on this piece of wood, you see it has virtually no sound at all, right? No, you can hear a little bit of difference or whatever. This little bit of difference I fixate on this little bit of difference. I take every piece of wood before I build a guitar, and I set it over in the corner, and I study it. You know, how limber is it? You know, how does it sound? You know, so I'll tap on it, beat on it, listen to it. You know, listen to it hanging up. You know, that kind of bass sound to it. Okay. When I get through bracing it, all that's going to come out. So the bracing that goes under the underneath side of the top is probably the most important thing. And I don't have an example to show you, except this one. This is one I got really mad at. And so I took a hammer and whacked the side of it and pulled it off the top in a temper fit.
That was actually on his dining room table the last time I was over.
Now, I've studied this top. I get fixated about it too, wondering why it was so bad. And this is not a good example, but this is called the Martin invented this X brace. This X brace is where the strength of the guitar comes in. Right here at this point, there's about 600 pounds of pressure on the guitar. And then this down here has to be free to vibrate to allow the guitar to vibrate and to make the sound, to make the tone that it's going to have. These are called the bass bars. And what these are made out of, how thick they are, how this is what's called a scalloped brace. It's carved out, dished out. If I take one of these and I start carving on that wood, it'll change the tone of this guitar immensely, just by how much you carve out of that and how much is missing from it. These over here tend to reflect the trebles, and so where you put these, I can move this brace over 1/4 of an inch, and it'll make a difference in how the guitar sounds. All of this is very, very critical, and so I've been working on a theory for where to put these braces and how to brace them and what to make it out of. This is made out of maple. This is what's called a reinforcing plate. The pins that go through the bridge will come right through here. The bridge, brought a bridge. The bridge will set right here on the guitar, and so underneath it will be this reinforcing plate. And so this reinforcing plate will go up and down with the bridge, and it just reinforces it so that on both sides of the both sides of the guitar, you have a big block of wood there to move the top up and down. It's sort of like having a diaphragm. It's sort of almost like a diaphragm or a fulcrum
that you're basically moving pressure on it. And so if this is on an angle, it moves the pressure one way. If it's straight, it moves another way. If it's rosewood, it makes one sound. If it's maple, it has another sound. When I'm building a guitar for somebody who does boom, ching, ching music, they want a lot of bass and they just kind of chord it or whatever, then I'll use rosewood and I'll put it on there straight. If I'm building it for a finger picker, somebody who wants mid-range tones to it, I'll make it out of maple and I put it on an angle like that. But I've been experimenting for years on this design and where to put these braces. So it's not uncommon for me to build a guitar, put the top on there, not finish it, but string it up and listen to it, and then take it apart, put it back together again, take it apart, put it back together again until I get it the way I want it. So I've been experimenting with this and the different types of wood to use. I can tell you that trash can cypress works really good for these two bass bars. So this, now what's happened to it, let me get over here, and even though this is a piece of scrap, and even though big pieces of it are missing, now listen to what happened. Okay, so not much here. Hold on. My jack is screwing this. Now you see how we got a little bit more sound to it. Everybody hear the difference? And so now I fixate on this.
Now, what kind of glue do you use?
Elmer's.
Okay.
That's what all guitar makers make them out of, either Elmer's or hide glue. I prefer Elmer's. The thing that's good about Elmer's glue is it's water soluble and it's not heat tolerant. So if you leave the guitar in your car and your guitar gets up to 130 degrees or 40 degrees and it's ready to explode, the bridge will pop off of the guitar and save the guitar. I can always put the bridge back on. But if you glue that guitar with some modern tech, high-tech plastic glue, that bridge is going to stay on there till that guitar explodes. And so I'd rather build them out of Elmer's, because Elmer's will just come apart if it needs to. If it needs to come apart, it comes apart.
And why Elmer's versus hide glue?
Hide glue, hide glue. You have to heat it up, and basically it's very, very brittle, and for no reason it'll come apart. I mean, it'll just get humidity in it and whatever. A lot of violins, great violins, are made out of hide glue, and for no reason they'll just come apart. And so I'd rather use Elmer's, although nobody has a track record on 250 years of Elmer's yet. But once you build the top, you glue the top onto the back and the sides. And now comes the fun. This is when you get to start listening to it. This thing's killing me. And how it's going to sound. No, I don't want to do that. We'll do it on the knee. Now hear the difference?
Pretty amazing.
See, you can't even hear this, and then it's amplifying it probably 1,000 times. Hear the difference? So what I do is I listen to this for a long time, and I have this idea of what it's supposed to sound like. That guitar, when it's finished, will actually sound very, very good.
And how long has that been together in that form?
About a year. I've had it up, hanging up, drying. So when it gets a finish on it, you're always trying to hit a moving target, because when you finish it, it's going to sound a little bit different than it does now. But I can already tell you that guitar is going to be a monster when it's put together. It'll be very, very loud. It'll also be very mid-range. That'll be pretty good. The fingerboard, how are we doing on time? The neck is here for structure. The necks are usually made out of mahogany, and basically what you cut these out with a draw knife. You have a knife that you just take a slab of mahogany, and I usually glue 2 or 3 pieces of mahogany together. Take a draw knife and you carve this out, and glue a piece of rosewood scrap to the top of it to get a rough form. This is called the truss rod. In case you guys ever wonder what a truss rod looks like, this is what a truss rod looks like. And it goes into this channel in the guitar like this. And this provides the strength, for the guitar. So what happens is the guitar, the strings are on here. you have 600 pounds of pressure pushing up on the end of this guitar, on the end of the neck. And so as you turn this is the adjustment. As you turn this, what it does is it compresses this piece of steel and makes it move into an inverted bow, sort of like an upside down U. Not that dramatic, of course, but it puts the pressure against the wood so that it offsets the 600 pounds of pressure from the strings, and it winds up making it stay straight. And so you want this to be absolutely, perfectly, 100% totally straight when you build it. And then you use this to offset the string pressure to keep it straight. Then the fingerboard is a piece of Madagascar ebony. This is how I buy them. It's just a piece of ebony. It has nothing to do with the sound that I know of, or very, very little. It fits onto on the fingerboard, sort of like this. And I can't resist making them decorative, so I always inlay them. Here's the one that I've just finished, and you can see that. This is luthiers have a tradition of making something called the Tree of Life. It looks a lot different than this. I call my design the Vine of Despair. It has a little flower everywhere there's supposed to be a dot. A lot of times the owners don't figure that out for a couple of years, but there's 2 dots on the 12th fret, one on the 9th and 2 on the 7th and whatever. Little flower everywhere there's supposed to be a dot. And the way you do that is I buy pearl. This is abalone pearl. These are called hearts. In the middle of an abalone shell, this is after the creature has been killed for food. They take the scrap shells and they cut them into slices like this. And right there in the middle of it, where that little circle is, that's where an oyster would grow. A pearl would grow. And it's called Abalone Hearts. These are about $65, $70 an ounce. So they're pretty light. You can get quite a few of them.
You don't get pearls and abalones, right?
Whatever. But this is. I know. Oysters. I know it's oysters, Charlie. But in an abalone, they have this one, a grain of sand, as I understand it.
All right.
Has landed there, and it made an irritation point. And right there where that irritation point happens is where the same thing happens on an oyster, only it turns into a pearl. But it's an irritation point, and right there in the center, that's my understanding. But I'm not in the abalone farm business, so I don't know. But these come from Java, with a Java Sea, and they dive down and get them and harvest them from that. You cut these things out with you cut the design out with a tiny jeweler's saw like this, and you cut them into pieces like that. That's the design that you want, and then you inlay it into the fingerboard by taking basically dental tools, and you drill out the hole that the inlay is going to set into. That's kind of how it works. And this takes a lot of time. It probably takes about, 30 minutes to do each piece. It takes a long time to get the fingerboard right. And then when it's all done, I always inlay the peg head. This is the peg head. This is what is going to go. This one's going to go on. And I have a little sort of logo of sorts that I put at the top with my initials on it. And so when this goes on there, it'll basically look like that. If you can see it, it'll be real pretty, real gaudy when it's done. Then when the whole thing's put together, it looks like the neck looks like this basically, and then I haven't tried this at home, but I'm sure it'll work. This goes down through there. No, I haven't cut this thing out. Let's cut this slide. If you pry it through there real hard, I won't do it. I'll break it. But it goes down through there. The neck joint goes into there, and then basically the guitar becomes one piece when it's all done like that. A lot of people are kind of curious about the about the binding. The binding that goes on the guitar is just little pieces of plastic. Like they come in strips like this. This is black, white, black, piece of black, white, black, and a piece of what's called ivory, which is simulated ivory. And basically, when you inlay it, you cut a trough into the guitar, and then you just stick these pieces of plastic on there and glue them, and then wrap the guitar up with cloth, rubber bands, or whatever. I got these gigantic rubber bands that I use sometimes, and that is what creates the binding. It's nothing more than decorative. When I put inlay around the side of the guitar, like the top of this guitar has abalone inlaid around the sound hole. What I do is I put weed eater cord in there, and I glue the binding on with weed eater cord in it, and then I pull the weed eater cord out, and that leaves a perfect little trough. So the weed eater cord is 0.67 or 0.067 inches or something. Leaves a perfect trough. And then I cut the abalone into slivers, especially the part that's not very decorative. These pieces will wind up with having, well, this is a beautiful piece here, but that's not, anyway, that's not an example. But like on the side over here, this is not very pretty. And so I'll cut those slivers off of there, and then you wind up inlaying them into the trough that's been created by taking the weed eater cord out. And you sand it off, and then it winds up. When this is finished, it'll look
Now,
like that.
now, how do you do the rosette?
The Rosetta, I have a jig that you put on a drill press, and it has little teeth in it, little knives in it, and you stick the sound hole on there, and it just cuts a slot in it. If somebody wants a Martin type inlay like this one's got, basically that's just pieces of that black, white, black stuck in there at different intervals is all to make it look that way. So these are, I take the jig, fix this down on the drill press, and then it spins around there 5 or 6 times and cuts a perfect hole. And just pop it down in there, sand it off.
And again, that's just cosmetic?
Purely cosmetic, as far as I know. And what else? That's probably about it, pretty close. Then once you get it all put together, then you have a guitar. Sounds easy.
Yeah.
10 easy steps.
Yeah, it's amazing. So how long, well, I know this isn't quite a fair question. Typically, how long would it take to put one together? I know you like to let yours sit, and you were telling me the Stradivarius story.
Well, what I do with I could build one. I could build the guitar body, probably in 2 or 3 days. Just if I just worked on it nonstop. Doing the inlay is what slows me down, and I kind of do that on purpose because I got a limited stash of wood, and I do not want to build them too fast. And so I do that on purpose to kind of slow me down. But here, between now and the time I'm 65, I'm just practicing anyway. So. I don't want to build them fast.
So what about finishes? You had told me one night this story about the wood used in the Stradivarius violins and the chloroform getting leached out.
Well, what happens is that everybody's tried to understand what's going on with the Stradivarius violin and why they sound so good, and there's no doubt that they do. And so a lot of the speculation is around the finish. And there's a professor at Texas A&M that has made his entire livelihood on just trying to understand what's going on with the Stradivarius finish. My theory is, and I kind of read about in this book that was published back in the 1880s, and I don't know if it's true or not, but basically part of that wood was left in salt water or was intentionally soaked in salt water to keep bugs from eating it. But somehow, some way, it got salt water in it. When the salt water got onto the spruce, it ate everything but the chlorophyll out. And so basically when you take wood and you remove all the sap out of it, you essentially just have a real nice lattice work of the cell structure left. So that when you put a finish on it, the finish goes into the holes that are left from the sap going out. Everybody knows that old wood sounds better than new wood.
And so my theory has always been that what's causing it, is that as the chlorophyll dries out of the, that's probably not the right word either, but it's dries out of the wood, that allows a place for the lacquer to go. And if the lacquer and the wood become one piece, it sounds better. Every old Martin guitar that you see, and you hold it up to the light, you can see the grain, the ripple of the grain in it. Whereas you go get a brand new one, they're just as smooth as glass. And so my sort of theory has been that over the years, somehow that lacquer has been leaching down into the wood. And so what I've done to speed that process up is that I coat the top of the guitars with a hateful chemical. I'm really sure it's carcinogenic. Something that's like toluene and mineral spirits and other stuff. You see this little white stuff that's on here? That's that stuff that's dried out of the wood. And so over the years, I leave this in here until I believe that I've got as much of that out of there as I can. The first time I put a coat of lacquer on this, you will swear it's never had a coat of lacquer on it. It will suck every bit of it up into the wood, 100% of it into the wood. I'll have to finish this guitar, 13, 14 times before I get the lacquer to set up on the top of it. And so, that's just my theory of what causes the top and the finish, to get into the top. So, anyway, this is another one of my just trying to check stuff out. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I'm really sure there's some luthier up at Martin right now that's just spinning around, mad about this because that's probably wrong. But who knows? I'm just experimenting.
Well, I've sort of noticed that if you ask 10 luthiers how to do something, you'll get about 35 answers.
Yeah, that's the truth there. Yeah, nobody knows the answer. That's why it's such a great mystery, to try to figure out what it is that makes them tick. And I don't know that I've got any special skills in it. It's just that I just want to get in the fray. That's all.
Was it about time to hear it?
Yeah, we got about 6 or 7 minutes. George has one of the guitars here, Professor Howard. This is one of my guitars that I built. This guitar I shipped to a guy in Nebraska. It got to be about 10 degrees below zero. They turned the heaters on in the house. The humidity went down to zero, and basically it exploded. So
They gave it to me.
So I got it back. Tore it apart, and tried to figure out what went wrong. And so I let George borrow it until I see whether it's going to stay together or not, and then we'll go from there. But anyway, that guy in Nebraska is really mad at me because I need to give him another guitar. That would be it there. But anyway, so I invited George, since he's a guitar player and I'm not, to come just let you hear what one sounds like.
I tried to convince him that I'd play, and we'd do a version of Hips Don't Lie. You sure you don't want to do that?
I'm positive.
All right, then. Well, I will tell you that I'm honored to have this guitar for as long as I have it. And, when Katrina hit, I took care of my family, and I took care of this guitar. I have had the good fortune of, playing a lot of nice guitars. And this one, I got a couple Martins at home in Boston, and this one so ranks right up there with it. So he knows of what he speaks. So that's what it sounds like.
Thanks, George. We've got time for a couple of questions. Yeah.
Could you make the thing, the pick guard or whatever that protects from strumming it right underneath?
Yeah, it's plastic. You just get them commercially. They used to make them out of tortoise shell, but that's become politically incorrect. You have to be careful about that because if you get the wrong kind of plastic, the plastic will shrink faster than the wood shrinking. It'll cause the top to crack. So you gotta get the right kind of plastic. You can't just go down to the art store and get some. Yes, sir. You barter it. What I do is I get wood, I get good wood, and I'll find somebody that wants it real bad, and they got some wood that I want, and I barter it. I traded some Brazilian rosewood for about 50 tops that a guy had. So so there's a guy in New Jersey named Gidwani, and he has access to Indian rosewood, and so I work with him. But there's a doctor down in Georgia that has a warehouse full. This little bitty tiny town in Georgia has a warehouse full of exotic woods, and so I haven't. You get it where you can get it. You can go on eBay now and find some stuff, but you can't find luthier quality stuff on there. And there's a food chain. It comes into the country. Rosewood comes in the country, goes to the Martin guitar plant. They take what they want, then it just starts to work its way down the food chain. At least that's my understanding of it. They get first pick on the crop.
Do they have guitars that are different shape than that? Or are they
Does
all
Martin?
the same? All the same?
No, Martin builds all different shapes of guitar. A lot of my customers want cutaways. They want to have have it cut away here so they can play up on the high register on the neck. I mean, a lot of them are cutaways these days. You sacrifice, I believe, you sacrifice a lot of tone when you remove that area out of the guitar. I'd rather build one that is a symmetrical shape. But here again, if my customers want one, well, I do it.
I think that's about all the time. One more? Yeah.
Terry, what about renewable tone woods, like walnut, for example, grows much faster, and I find it makes you really good guitars. Are there renewable?
They're renewing all the exotic woods are being renewed. There are cocobolo farms in Central America. There are rosewood farms in South America. Unfortunately, John is not going to live long enough to, well, I can hope.
I'm talking about today now. Like walnut is a 50 to 25-year harvest rate or something. It's a much shorter term.
Yeah, the problem with the walnut, and I can understand why people would like walnut. But walnut, generally has a wider grain. It's not as dense, and the tonal qualities of it are just, it's beautiful wood. But I personally don't. I'd rather the wood be a lot denser myself. But
Are there other renewable tone woods that are coming over?
yeah, the Martin guitar plant has been picketed by environmental groups. And they've signed on to some deal where you get renewable woods and all this. But everybody's trying to deal with it. I mean, but the problem with hardwood is that every time some company goes in Georgia and they cut down a forest and they replant it, and all the conservationists go, "Wow, they replanted the forest. Isn't that a great thing?" The problem is they replanted the forest with nothing but one kind of tree. And it's that genetically modified, what we call popsicle stick wood. It grows really, really fast, and they try to make 2x4s out of it and paper out of it or whatever. The problem, with that is that to wildlife and to the earth, there's no difference between that pine field and a cornfield. I mean, environmentally, there's no difference at all. There's no diversity in it. Ecologically, it's just no different. And so what's happening is hardly anybody's planting oak. During Katrina, I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. During Katrina, there was so much precious hardwood, thrown in the trash and out in the dumpsters and the landfill that it's just criminal. How much oak was thrown away?
a lot of these houses around here were built out of Spanish cedar and Cuban mahogany and whatever, you know, because in the 1880s, that's kind of what you used in houses. And all the cedar and stuff just got thrown away, got bulldozed down and got thrown in.
Actually, they were all chipped too.
Yeah, out
Yeah.
of ships.
So they're shredded.
And it's just, you know, it's criminal, you know, what, you know, that we just threw all that stuff into the landfill.
All right, well, on that happy note.